All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Sakht Cricket. Um, and I think today we're pretty much going to talk about like the, I mean, almost like the game concluded over an hour ago. So the second Test match between India and England, which is a part of a larger five-match series. Just to give you a quick recap, England won the first one. I'd say pretty comprehensively. They chased down the total. The second game, you know, they had sort of said that it would be might have been a bit of like a dead rubber situation just because the weather was supposed to play a pretty significant role, but we saw no rain until the last day, I think, and then India, I think, was a pretty dominating performance. There's a couple of things that
Yeah.
we can chat about, but I'll sort of like start with you, Faisal. Like, what do you think? I think it was. I don't think that there was any, not session, but like any part during the game where England seemed that they were in play. I think they were always trying to do catch up, and I think it may have started with um, the toss where Stokes decided to bowl on a day that was sun shining, bit of a flat pitch, and then he decided to bowl. What do you think that's where it went wrong, or?
Um, no, I think that so if you look at the match and the way that it progressed, in the first innings, I think India was 200 for 5 at one point. And then Gill was still better, but I think at that point it was either Sundar or Jadeda who walked in, and then England just let them build a partnership, and then things got out of hand. That score in the first innings should have never crossed 500. So their bowling failed them significantly. And we talked about that in the first game too, right? Like they are missing key bowlers, and it on a pitch that didn't really help the seamers, at least in the way that England bowled. It showed. It seemed more like a subcontinent wicket than an England wicket, and you could tell that the Indian seamers were much more adept at bowling on that pitch than the English seamers were, right? So I think that kind of set the tone of the match. I don't think that they were playing catch up. There was a point in the first innings as well where Harry Brook and Jamie Smith just showed that this is not that difficult a pitch to bat on, and they were hitting the Indian bowling all over the park. Like the apart from Akashdeep and Siraj, the Indian bowling attack looked pretty meek. Um, but once India took that 170 odd lead in the first innings, you could tell that okay, this is going to be a difficult comeback for England because if they ball anything like they ball in the
Mm,
first innings, India's likely going to put up a significant target. They're probably not going to make the same mistake that they did in the last match, giving him a sub 400 total. So um, it's going to be a big score for them to chase down. And knowing the way that England bats, I always just thought that they're they don't
mm.
really draw games. So it's going to be a very significant departure from their philosophy to now try and draw the game out on the fifth day, especially on a pitch where the Indian seamers and the bowlers are just much more
Mm.
comfortable bowling.
Especially in the absence of Bumrah, right? Like I think Kashti probably stepped up a
Hmm.
lot because Siraj was still. I think he sort of bowled the same way that he had in the last one. Not a lot of difference there. I think Akashdeep was definitely much more adept, as you said, at exploiting the pitch, whereas the England seamers, you know, weren't able to do the same thing. But then you also have to give credit where credit is due. I think Shubman Gill's innings, like both,
Hmm.
phenomenal. I think he played really well. Obviously, it's just one game, but like he sort of led from the front, and he understood that just pile up as many runs as you can, and then let England sort of,
Yeah.
make the same mistakes because England did make the same mistakes as they did in the last game, except India sort of maybe, fine tuned themselves a little bit more, which is where I think we saw a bit of the difference. And obviously, like with I think Siraj and Nakashti were probably able to bowl in pairs as well, which I think with Bumrah that wasn't really
Hmm.
happening for whatever reason. Maybe it was just the first game they were a bit rusty. Um, so I think, but India has broken the Edgbaston curse though. So I think now,
I'm glad you brought Gill up because that test match for Gill was phenomenal. Like scoring about 430 odd runs in a single test match is crazy. So hats off to him to play that inning, especially given that he is captain. Um, I I did find some of the criticism that went his way, especially from the commentary team and even from some of the pundits, that oh they played too slow in the second innings and they should have accelerated more and they should have declared earlier. But it, the way that England bowled or batted in the first innings and the way that the Indian steamers bowled, you could tell that if this game goes into day five with England chasing, and if it's a plus 450, 500 score, India has a very
Mm.
chance of bowling them out. And you could even when Gill was interviewed before the match, he was saying we need to find a way to
Yeah.
get 20 wickets. And some of the team composition that they then went with didn't really make sense because I thought there was more batting heavy. But Akarsdeep stepped up, Siraj bowled well. The rest of the team didn't really perform in the first innings, but they did come back in the second. And holding back England is always the challenge, right? Like if they get going, and if they are giving you chances and you're not taking them, they're going to put up a huge score. But if you do start taking your chances, which India did, they fielded well in the second test match instead of the first where they did drop a lot of catches. They came out on top. Like you said, like England made the same mistakes. It just didn't cost India much
Because they
this
had
time
fine tuned
because
themselves a little bit.
they they fine tuned this inside.
Yeah.
They fielded well, they bowled better. It seemed like they came to the Edgbaston pitch more prepared, and the English team seemed like they were playing in slightly
Yeah.
foreign conditions. So hats off
Yeah.
to India,
No,
man. They played brilliantly.
they had, like, you could tell there was a strategy behind everything, and even I think the fact that they declared late, obviously we're looking at this in hindsight, but it made sense because they had given them a
Hmm.
400 target, thinking that they could bowl them out. That's that was probably the intent with the last declaration in the first match,
Hmm.
knowing that, like, the way Bumrah is, if he's able to get through and get some support, then they should be able to break through. But that didn't happen. So this time they said, like, all right, pile up a bit more on top of it and then bring them in, right? Which
Yeah,
also debilitates the opposition as well. Like, you're keeping them in the field for a while, right? So they're going to be tired.
exactly.
So when they do come to bat, like, there may be lapses of concentration and things like that. And they were able to get in a few overs at night, right? Or the evening session, which is where we've
Yeah,
seen wickets fall for both teams, right? So I think the strategy was sound. I don't
yeah,
know why people were complaining about it. It worked out, and basically by scoring that 600 and setting up that target, India basically, made sure that they wouldn't lose regardless, and they gave themselves a really good chance of winning as
yeah,
well, which they did, right? So
yeah.
I think it's just, I think they knew what they were doing.
I think I think part of it is because England is sort of, and maybe to some extent even Australia, they're kind of setting the tone for how Test matches need to be played, right? And you had this mentality that well, a draw isn't a good result. We need to get a win or a loss. So people are starting to think along those lines and saying, well, you don't really need a 600 plus total, but you have to remember that if England had to chase down 400 in the last game,
Yeah.
they probably would have, right? So you have to first make sure that well, there's no way we're going to give them even a sniff that they're going to chase this down. So just beat them down and then make the total so large that they have to start thinking about a draw, and now you're making them do something that they actually
Yep.
don't want to do. So you're not playing to their strengths; you're actually
Yep.
playing to their weaknesses. So I thought that it was really smart. Like they read the pitch well, they read the game well, and Stokes even said, like in his post-match interview, that we were in the field too long, we were drained. So yes, we had that chance at 200 for five in the first innings, but after that, we
And
never
that's
really
what
got a chance.
Test cricket is about, right? Like, there's the 5 days where
Hmm.
it's not just your skill in terms of if you're a batsman or if you're a bowler, it's also your fitness, right? So it's a very
Hmm.
it's a very common strategy to do that, to put up a big score, because you're putting up runs so that you can defend them, and then B, you're also ensuring that the opposition gets tired. So this is where there's like a lot of criticism about basketball. I like the way that you're making Test cricket exciting, but the excitement just isn't just about like batting, like hitting sixes and fours and scoring fast. I feel
Yeah,
sure there may be certain occasions where you do need to score fast, so then you should. But there may be certain situations in which you just need to bat deep, right? There was a concept of a rear guard, right? Like a defensive position
yeah,
in which a draw can turn out to be like, if, for example, if England had managed to conserve their wickets and they had been able to bat through the day, that's kind of a win for them, right? Because India is gonna
yeah,
win,
exactly.
like India was already on top. So I think that they also, like, if they're setting the tone for how Test match cricket needs to be played, then I think they also need to show that, like, sometimes there's you might not want to bat fast, and drawing a game from a position of losing is like winning. So I think there needs to be some
Yeah,
recalibration there.
I remember a couple of years ago, Pakistan was touring. No, Australia was touring Pakistan, and Pakistan had to chase down 470 odd in the last innings, and then Babar and
Yeah,
Rizwan played that innings where Babar made it like 196 or something. They ended up coming so close that there was this moment after the tea session where you're like, well, if Rizwan actually does go for it and plays like an ODS, I think Pakistan might be able to pull this off. They fell short by 30 or so, but they
mm,
still drew the game. From Pakistan's perspective, that was a win because at no point in that test match did it look like
yep,
you would not lose. Right, so context is very important in test match. I don't think it necessarily means that yes, having a result where it's a win or loss is a good thing, and it's good for stats, and it's good for the game because people who don't follow test cricket understand who wins or who loses. But for the purists who are watching the game, a draw isn't necessarily a bad game. It could be just as exciting. It just means that at the end of the day, no team could really
yeah.
outthink the other team or outsmart the other team, right? So
Which,
there is that to
which
it
means it was
in
a
Test
good
cricket
game,
as well.
which it was. It was a phenomenal game, and I think
Hmm.
India has really set up the series. And I think that's a good segue into sort of wrapping up this video. But what I'd like to end with is just, I think the series is now really evenly poised, and now they're going to go into Lords, which traditionally for subcontinent teams has always been a good hunting ground because for some reason Lords does provide like a good matchup between bat and bowl. So I think, and especially with Bumrah coming back, England is definitely going to be under pressure. Do you think that they're going to change anything, or they're still going to go with their same Bazball approach and try to just outbat the opposition?
I don't think England is going to change the approach. They've kind of expressed that this is the way that they're going to play moving forward. It doesn't matter whether they win or lose. At least that's what they make us think, right? So um, they might think about Archer a bit more seriously now,
But can he come back?
considering it's
Can
at
he, like, is
Lords.
he fit to come back?
They were thinking there was a conversation happening where they were saying they might even come back in the second game. So because of and we were thinking the same thing, right? There was forecast of rain. The pitch seemed like it's not really going to help the bowlers as much. It seemed like a game that which is basically just going to be a dead rubber. It's going to end up being a draw. India pulling off a win and a significant win is a huge achievement for them. Set the subsidies. So now I think England will have to think about, well, do we bring in Archer, or do we hold him back for the last two? Mark Wood potentially might be available for the last two, if not the
Mm,
last game. So they have to think about that too. They do need to think about potentially playing somebody else than Saj
mm.
Shabir. Like I think that
He sucks, man. Like, he's really,
he
like, he didn't do anything. Like, it was just a waste of a. a play.
he's not getting a lot of overs. He's not effective as a bowler. I just don't understand. Like, and he's not a good bat either. Neither is a good fielder. So against a team like India, which is actually playing spin really well, I feel like he's basically just eating up a space. Um,
I'd bring in a seamer.
like, I would pick another seamer or like think about like, and I know that Adil Lathi has played test matches. Maybe think about
I
bringing
think
him
he's
in.
retired though.
He's
He's
definitely a better
retired
bowler than
from red cricket.
from,
Yeah, he's
test
retired from
cricket.
red ball. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, then they don't really have any options, and they have to bring another seamer. So because like Vokes and Tongue and uh, what's the last guy's name? I don't even remember. Um, they're not really getting the job done, and it was the same thing that we could tell you in the first match, right? Like they Tongue and like they have pace, but they don't have a lot of guile. And Vokes does have guile, but doesn't have any
Yeah.
pace to trouble the Indian batsman. And the way that Shubman Gill and Rishabh Pant and even Jadeja played in the second Test match, even if the pitch was helping the seamers, the way that they batted and they played against the English seamers, it just seemed like this, like the English seamers are just not that
Yeah.
high quality. So England does have to think about some
Yeah.
bowling changes.
With the top five and the top six, the way that they're sort of now like looking in terms of like their, the confidence will be high for India, and they seem to now be in good touch. I think England's going to have to definitely try to think about um, how they're going to approach the third game. Otherwise, because India is looking pretty good. So anyway, I think that sort of
Yeah,
does bring us to a close for this one. And I think we'll continue to cover the series. Let us know in the comments if there's anything you guys would like specifically covered when it comes to, do you want us to do like a mid-match review, or do you want us to do like a start of the game and then an end of the game? And if there's other things that you'd like to for us to talk about, please let us know in the comments. Again, please like, subscribe, and share, and we will see you guys next time.